Hey guys, welcome back. It's good to be doing this again with you. This is chapter 12, the South. And this chapter I usually really enjoy teaching in class because it really talks about the differences between the North and the South, of course. And it's not the easiest chapter to go talk about when we actually get to see each other, because obviously we're going to talk about Southern society and Southern culture. And unfortunately, what that also does mean is slavery is going to be discussed in this chapter, in this chapter as well. So use this PowerPoint, use this presentation, my little video lecture series to help you with your assignment. And let's get started, shall we? All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to share my screen here, and let's get going. So again, you have access to this, and just use this when you need to, okay? So here we go. We're talking about the South. Now, here's a map of the Southern United States. Everything in that dark red is going to be part of the Confederacy in the Civil War, okay? Those states that have the stripes, those are called border states. So they are pro-slavery states, but they do stay with the North in the Civil War. So you have Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware. Okay, so slavery exists there, but they are going to stay with the Union. So, but let's really start talking about the South. All right, the growing of the cotton industry. So cotton is literally going to be called, as you can see right here in this cartoon or this picture, King Cotton. Okay, and cotton is going to revive the Southern economy. You have a picture on the left here. I believe that's from the movie 12 Years a Slave, but that's what cotton looks like when you grow it. And cotton, when you pick it, there are really sharp seeds in there. So you pull the cotton to try to get rid of it. It's like a comb going through your hair or a brush, okay? Now, the seeds are sharp, so it actually could really cut your hand up. Now, of course, red blood on white cotton, that means product you can't have. So it would take a ridiculously long time to pick through a cotton. It would take like a day to go through 1 pound of cotton. All right. So next up, why did the South economy need reviving? Well, after the American Revolution, prices of a couple goods fell: rice, tobacco, and indigo. Okay. And so what happens is when prices fall, you need to turn to a new way to make money. And so a lot of Southern farmers turn to cotton. Now, what happens is there's a machine called the cotton gin that gets invented by Eli Whitney. He was from last chapter, and he did this to make it more efficient. Okay, so if you can get the seeds out of cotton quicker, that means prices go down. You can produce more. You can lower prices. You're still making money, and your customers are happy because it's still cheap. All right. Now, most of the large-scale farmers, we call them planters. So that's one of your vocab terms. Most of the large-scale farmers, or the planters, owned 20 or more slaves. Okay, this machine turned 1 slave into 50, and it inadvertently leads to a higher demand of slaves. All right. Now, what happens is we have a boom in cotton. Okay, in 1860, 1 billion pounds of cotton was produced. 1 billion. We made over half of all the cotton in the entire world. Think about that. One country made over half, and it was the United States. Now, why this is important? Because it's going to prevent Southern society from really embracing other forms of, other economic goods, okay? So you can tell from these two pictures, and you have a little Giphy right over here that shows you the slave population. With cotton becoming so valuable and the cotton gin making it easy, like you literally put the cotton in and you turn the crank and it just combs out the seeds. It's so much faster. Now, you can see from this map where slavery goes, and every single year. So it's 790, 800, 810, 1820, 1830, 1840, and finally, right before the Civil War, 1860. And you can see from this graph here on the left that, you know what, the amount of cotton produced is finally going to grow the amount of slaves in the United States, because that cotton gin becomes such a tool that a lot of the planters in the South are getting rich. All right, next up. A lot of people feared that the South depended too much on cotton, and they were right. So there was like a couple of like iron industries. Tredegar Iron Works is one of the most famous ones of the time, but they were rare in the South. And you have a quote there on the bottom that says, "We should keep pace with the progress of the age. We need to expand. We need new industries, okay? We need to do things other than cotton." All right, there's a map of where cotton was grown. And on the right, you have how we pick cotton today, okay? Get up on a John Deere tractor, go plow. So let's talk about Southern society, and you have this pyramid right here. And as you can see, slaves at the bottoms, planters all the way at the top. Planters don't make up a whole lot of Southern society. Few rich at the top, most people at the bottom. But as you can see, even free blacks were below poor whites at this time, all right? Now, there's a common misconception, whether it's just, because of media or bad history, that most Southerners lived in these big, lavish mansions, and had a bunch of slaves. It's just not true. Most Southerners were poor middle class, okay? If that mansion looks familiar to you, that's because it's from Forrest Gump. Run, Forrest. Now, let's talk about the Yeomen. Now, they are the largest group of Southern whites, okay? They own small farms, simple homes. Most of them maybe had a slave, maybe two, but it wasn't a given. This next graph is going to show you how many people actually had slaves in 1860, okay? 17% of the Southern population owned slaves. So that's 17% of all people in the South, white or black, okay? 49%, so almost half of the population, are non-slaveholding whites. Only 2% of the population are free African Americans, and then the remaining 32% of the population are enslaved African Americans. Okay, so that shows you, that really paints the picture. And even though slaveholding whites are only 17%, that's just if you even have one. Okay, there are people who have multiple, hundreds, okay? Now, plantations, okay, like we said a couple slides ago, we're talking about the planters, the large-scale farmers. The planters are 12% of the population, and that 12% owned over half of all slaves. Let that sink in. Over half. Now, religion becomes pretty important to the African American community, because you have to understand, if you're living this life as a slave, or even if you're free, you're not treated the way you should be treated. Okay, you're not treated like a man or a woman. All right, and this idea of heaven, of salvation, becomes really important to slave life. It becomes a method of hope for slaves. Okay, and white Southerners believed God wanted them to rule and control slaves. Like, they actually believed that God intended slave owners to enslave the African population, because they believed that the African population could not take care of themselves, and it was their Christian duty to do so. And this is where it's interesting, because you have slaves who are reading the same Bible as slave-owning whites, and you have non-slave-owning whites, and whites who wanted to abolish slavery, get rid of it, and they're all reading the same book. So it's really interesting how Christianity just gets divided. And you have a quote here at the bottom from one of my favorite people in history, Frederick Douglass, who was a runaway slave, taught himself how to read and write, and this guy was probably one of the best speakers. And he says he loves the pure, peaceful, and impartial Christianity of Christ, but he hates the corrupt slave-owning version of it as well. Finds it hypocritical. All right, what about free African Americans? About 250,000 free African Americans in the South that are free, mostly in big urban cities like Atlanta. They face discrimination, couldn't vote, couldn't hold some jobs, stuff like that. And many white Southerners viewed free African Americans as a threat to slavery, because if their slaves can see free African Americans, then that means they're slaves could want to become it. All right, and you have a map here that shows how this would work, right? The plantation owner's house, the overseer's house, the smokehouse, the stables, the fields, okay, and slave cabins located farther down the road from the actual main plantation. All right, so if we were in class, we would be doing this activity, but we're not. Last section of this, the slave system. So what life was like for slaves in the South. Now, slave work, they worked as cooks, field hands, butlers, blacksmiths, carpenters. Poor weather and sickness rarely stopped you from working, all right? You were working. There's no calling out sick. There's no, well, it's, you know, a tornado's touching down. We can't, you know. And it was a really sad way of living, of course. Working through injuries, dirty living conditions, okay? And here's like kind of like a series of bunk beds, and this is what slave houses look like. And this picture really stirs me because you have a slave nurse. So a nurse isn't the hospital nurse that we're talking about that you think of today. They're a slave that takes care of the young babies of their masters. So that's why you have a black slave nurse with the young white master. And you have to think to yourself, you know, what would it be like? You know, assume this nurse has a child of her own. Who takes care of that child? It's a really sad part. All right. Slave codes and punishment, okay? You have a list of some slave codes, like, you know, you could punish and whip your slave whenever you wanted, okay? Slaves are not allowed to hit white people. Slaves cannot own property. Slaves cannot buy or sell goods. Slaves cannot leave the property without permission. Can't learn to read and write, because if you learn how to do that, you're going to read some of the anti-slavery material that's out there. And you must get permission to get married. Now, again, if you got married, your marriage vows would say, till death or separation do you part, because if your spouse got sold, you would automatically get a divorce. All right. Now, family becomes important. And the extended family becomes important, because if a slave mother, father got sold, you know, who takes care of you? Well, a lot of the times, you know, you'll have an aunt, uncle, grandparent who's also a slave on the same plantation with you. So the extended family becomes really, really important to the African American, to the slave community. Okay. Now, here's a couple quotes, and I'm going to take you back to John C. Calhoun, who was Andrew Jackson's vice president. And this quote is really, really, it's kind of sad that this has actually happened. And he said, never before has the black race of Central Africa, from the beginning of history to today, attained a condition so civilized and improved, not only physically, but morally and intellectually. He's calling slavery a condition that's civilized, morally and intellectually, being a slave. Now, this bottom quote, or let's just go through them. The second quote: but to protect men, we must have the power of controlling them. We must first enslave them before we can protect them. And again, this is going to that racism at the time, that, you know, God wants the white race to take care of the African American community because their race means that they're unable to do it. I mean, this is literally what was thought, and even by people who were against slavery. So they might not have liked slavery, doesn't mean they weren't racist, okay? This quote is crazy to me. When the day's work is ended, he is free, but is overburdened by the cares of family and household, which make his freedom empty. The Negro slave is free too, when the labors of the day are over, and free in mind as well as body, for the master gives them food and house and fuel and everything else necessary for him and his family. Here it is. The Negro slaves of the South are the happiest and, in some sense, freest people in the world. So we have a former vice president saying that slaves are some of the freest people in the world, because when they're done working, they just get to go to sleep. They don't have to worry about buying food. They don't have to worry about buying clothes. The master provides that for them. First time I heard that, I was pretty shocked too. All right. So there's a movie called 12 Years a Slave. It talks about some more quotes. I'll let you guys go ahead and look through that yourselves. You have another quote of it too. I wanted to talk about Nat Turner's rebellion. So Nat Turner is a preacher who also is a slave. And what he's going to do, eventually he's going to get fed up with how slaves are being treated. And he is going to lead a slave revolt, and they're going to kill around between 55 and 60 whites. And this is men, women, and yes, children. And he felt justified in this because a lot of those slave children are going to become slave masters. His rebellion is going to be put down, and he will be hanged, and as a punishment, over 100 innocent slaves will be killed for it. There was a movie that came out not too long ago called Birth of a Nation, and that's the little picture you see in the bottom right-hand corner, okay? And with that, that brings us to a couple of pictures of punishment. This is one of the most famous photos of a slave as that has been shared around, and you can tell by the look on his back. When it starts looking like that, what that means is that you've been whipped in the same spot repeatedly. That the first time you get whipped, you scar up and your skin builds on top of that scar like a bubble. Well, if it opens it up again, it's going to keep on building and building. And so that's why his back looks the way it does. A couple more common punishments, and where you're whipped in public, where you're actually forced to be, like on the left, tied behind a pole and just left there in the middle of a hot day. One of these kind of collar looking things, so these hooks would get caught, they'd be uncomfortable, they're heavy, so the iron's digging into your skin. And with that, that will go ahead and conclude our chapter 12 presentation. So I hope you enjoy it and use this to get your work done as well as your book. Okay, bye.